Now, do carbohydrates actually make you tired and make you fatigued? Well, yeah, they can, and there's some pretty interesting mechanisms as to why. Okay, we'll talk about the blood sugar side, but then there's also another piece of the equation we need to talk about when we get into the amino acids that are floating through our bloodstream. It's a pretty wild situation. I have an awesome analogy for it. So let's go ahead and dive in. But after this video, I do want you to check out today's video sponsor, which is Thrive Market. They've been a sponsor in this channel for like 4 years now. They're an online membership-based grocery store. So whatever kind of dietary pattern you're following, keto, vegan, paleo, you name it, you go online, you select whatever filters you want. Say I want keto, select that keto filter, boom, keto foods pop up for me. I can select what I want and then have it shipped right to my doorstep. I get it within a couple days, easy peasy, and that's it. So there is a link down below for you to check them out, save you 25% off your first order, but you'll also get a free gift. But you gotta use that video sponsor link that's down below if you drop down the description there. So check them out after this video, and a big thank you to them. Okay, so the simple thing to address that everyone and their brother will address is if you eat carbohydrates, you're gonna have a blood sugar spike and that blood sugar is gonna drop and then you're gonna yeah. Okay, the drop in blood sugar can definitely make you feel tired. Okay, but the first thing that drop in blood sugar is gonna do is more than anything, just make you hungry. Okay, first thing that your body's going to do when your blood sugar drops is tell you to eat more. Okay, so most people that I know, and most people, at least in America, when they get that blood sugar drop, they don't go take a nap, they go eat more. Okay, so the fatigue, yes, but it's more about the hunger. I think there's a different mechanisms that's making us more fatigued. Okay, the issue is more at play with tryptophan and kind of what happens in terms of large neutral amino acids. And I wanted to address this. Okay, when we have a high spike in our glucose, a high spike in insulin, what ends up happening is tryptophan is able to get into the brain more. And I wanted to be able to explain how this works. Okay, so tryptophan is an amino acid, but it has to compete with other amino acids, specifically what are called large neutral amino acids. Okay, it competes for absorption in the brain. Okay, so normally this tryptophan is having to fight against a bunch of other amino acids and doesn't really get the absorption credit that it deserves. Okay, but after you have carbohydrates, you have a big spike in insulin, right? This spike in insulin allows the tissues throughout your body to soak up amino acids. Well, what does that mean? That means all the competition that would normally be flooding to the brain otherwise is now going out to the muscle tissue, leaving tryptophan a empty freeway to drive up to the brain. The analogy that I've used before is, let's say you want to go to a concert, but there's no other concerts in town, so 100,000 people are all going to that concert, and you have to fight and try to work your way to get in. You have to compete with the other people to get in. But if there were 20 other concerts going around in the same city, there's a good chance that that would be diversified, and that would limit the competition to get into your concert. Okay? So then what happens is when that tryptophan can get into the brain, it gets into the specific region and it helps support the production, or it's very, very important to the production of serotonin, which is the neurotransmitter that helps us feel good. It helps us feel even satiated in some ways, feel relaxed. Well, relaxed is different from feeling sleepy, but serotonin is a precursor to melatonin. Okay, now you may be thinking melatonin only increases when it's dark out. Not necessarily. That is the predominant thing. We have different clock genes that play a role in that. But if we are eating a high amount of carbohydrates, that can be a little bit overridden. Like it can just, you're gonna have this tryptophan that's gonna go into the brain, it's going to support serotonin, which is going to convert into melatonin, making you sleepy. So when you look at the whole kind of like turkey thing with Thanksgiving, turkey has a lot of tryptophan, but unless that tryptophan is able to get into the brain, it's really not doing much. So having these carbohydrates, it's the stuffing and it's all the mashed potatoes and things like that, that suddenly allow this bolus of tryptophan to get into the brain where normally it would be competing. Combine that with a blood sugar crash, and that is why you would typically get fatigued, okay? Now, the other piece of the equation that people don't always look at is how efficient we are at utilizing carbohydrates, right? Okay, if you consume carbohydrates and you are good at utilizing them, they're going to go through glycogenesis and they're going to go into their storage form, and your blood sugar is going to stay relatively mellow. Okay, the problem is the more insulin resistant that you are, the less the glucose gets absorbed and the more your glucose stays high. And then you run into some issues where it could crash or where it could go through de novo lipogenesis and turn into fat. And that's when you start running into different issues. Okay, so my suggestion to allow you to be able to feel like you don't get fatigued, but you still want to eat carbohydrates, is have very clear defined gaps between your meals. So you're not consistently bombarding your body with carbohydrates. You're having very clear defined gaps. Okay, so like 3 hours where I am not going to consume any carbohydrates between meals. If you do have snacks, keep them very low carb. Beef jerky, keep them with maybe some beef sticks or some turkey sticks, or keep them with some macadamia nuts or nuts that have very little carbs, pili nuts, Brazil nuts, things like that. They will be very powerful for you in that case. Another thing that you can do is have a 12-hour fasting period every day. Don't even consider it a fast. Okay, I don't eat between the hours of 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. Sometimes it's 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. On a weird occasion, if I'm out later, it might be 9 p.m. and 9 a.m. But the bottom line is that I always have a 12-hour fasting period and a 12-hour eating period. That will sometimes change. Like if I'm fasting, that's a different situation. I'll do a 16, 18, 20-hour fast, right? That's a different ballgame. I'm talking about in situations where I'm not fasting. My standard on even an eating day is still always eat within a 12-hour window and give yourself that 12-hour gap to improve the insulin sensitivity so you don't necessarily get these weird effects. It's also going to make it so that your insulin sensitivity is better and therefore the brain can uptake that tryptophan the way it's supposed to, and you're not having these weird like rises and falls of when your brain can utilize it. So as always, keep it locked in here on my channel, and I'll see you tomorrow.